Hello, I'm Mackay Stevens. I work at a company called HavenStudios.net, and was saw Brackeys did a video, so it's kind of response to him. Here's this game he made for Let 'Em Dare 41, I believe. So I downloaded the source because I liked it. I thought it was a really great idea, and this is kind of what I came up with. I'm partially blind, so my UI is always a problem. So the first thing I noticed, while I could drag and move items, the UI is there we go. Had to be adjusted a little bit. Then I did this and realized you can't swap items. Um, and someone was talking about fire and sand, but it does not make glass. And then you create fire. Spoiler. Oh, and then that's off screen as well. And then you can collect these, which is kind of ironic. And then you can't click on them. You have to drag and drop. Anyways, that's how the gameplay works, and I figured, hey, that's not really that fun. Oh, sorry. Slate, let's see, which one are we looking for? Here we go. Lots of stuff to show. Okay, so then I decided to create this version with my own project. So the UI scales quite a bit better. So if I'm playing really small, I can't really play that big. So then I decided, hey, let's swap items. So you can swap items in and out. You can still try the fire and glass, and nothing works. You can swap in, nothing works here. Oh, hey, now it works. The other thing I added is the ability to just click on the item you get, which also sort of, I'm not sure what the ghost items are for, but they were, you can't, I thought I could, do something with them, but that doesn't seem to be how the game is working. So let's show you some code here. This is all his code. I guess we're gonna show you. So I started with the drag hand. This is his code. This is for Let 'Em Dare. So it's kind of a gray area whether or not they have to publish their source code because that's the competition. Anyway, so I looked at the drag handler. This is a pretty nice drag handler. It takes the item and puts it into an item display script, which I don't have up because I didn't access that. And then you creates this sprite, an image which you can drag stuff with using these drag interfaces using the Unity system. And he's got this static reference to this item being dragged using the get component of the display. That's the actual item display. I started making some changes here. Um, you can sort of, but I realized this is sort of like since it's called drag handler, I thought maybe I should call it click handler. And then I looked in the item pool. This is the actual where items are created and sort of stored and moved around. This only had so this is kind of where the items are dropped. Um, um, yeah, which is actually not part of the crafter. Anyways, so then I said I needed a return item. So I had this. I needed instead of accessing this through the on drop, I need an add item because the drag handler drops the item into here, and then it needs to do all this stuff here. So I've added this back in through here. I've got the item, and then I dumped it back into here because this sort of tells grabs the item, has the items, and assigns the item, does stuff like that. This is through the inventory. I then created this return item function. This takes the item in from the item click and the crafting slot. I guess I actually did change the crafting slot. So it returns the game object, gets the item components, the item click, and destroys it. This was added late because when I add this item click, you could call it like a click handler maybe, and then once the item is returned to the inventory, it removes itself, so you can't click on the item anymore. Maybe you would like to click on items for other things, but I just was keeping this simple, and then it dumps it back into the pool. If we go into let's see, the crafter slot here, Yeah, so we changed this around. Yeah, I actually did change this. Probably me where it's just. So when you drop an item on the crafter slot, it used to just take this item and check if it wasn't, if it's not equal to the item object, then you can. It did some other stuff, but then I just added this. So it had this um, remove item because you need to remove the item from the craft. Um, yeah, remove the item from the. Well, anyway, so it basically takes the item object because the item object is here, returns it to the inventory, and then removes it from the crafter slot. These are two separate steps, but um, this is kind of how this system was built. So I didn't want to mess with it too much, and then we set the item object to null, even though we're going to mess with it later. And then this is the item being dragged, which is a static. So whenever you start this drag, which wasn't really changed much, then it sets the static object here, and then this sets the transform, and then sets position, and then adds it back into the crafter interface. And then the crafter is what decides what items are created from. And when we create, we thought these were ghost items at first. I'm not really sure what the ghost items for, but when you finish your slots here, you add and remove items. It updates the results, checks the results, and then all the results are created in this create item. And then so this should really be called craft item, perhaps, because I don't believe this is actually creating the individual items. But it's let him dare. It's 48 hours. I think he had like 36 hours or whatever. Um, and you got so it's like it's really quick. But anyways, this looks like a craft item. So here I add in my item click, which is so they create the game object using the prefab. Um, they get the item display, which is actually what displays quick. It's just a interface to the display, and then it sets up an item. And this is actually kind of like I call this item geo, which is just a mono behavior item. He doesn't add any logic here, which is probably pretty smart, but I usually tend to add a lot of like this is all my item is actually the item I'm using, which is this like scriptable object, and then this is the actual mono behavior that runs the image and the UI, and this is like a UI component here. Anyways, and then so I add the click handler, which is just a simple mono behavior click. It could be actually called a click handler. Because that sort of would fit with his drag handler. But anyways, on the item click handler, we just debug and say the item was clicked, and we just play a clock. I borrowed this from the drag, and then I said, oh, so you play some sort of animation that you clicked on the item, and then you return the item to the inventory, which feeds right back into this same thing, which I was talking about earlier. That if it has an item click, it destroys it, so you can't click on it anymore, and then it just adds it back into the item pool. So it's pretty straightforward, pretty simple. One other thing I also would like to talk about is the UI, and these are quite long. I changed the UI quite simply. What I like to do is I like to do the only thing it was like constant pixel size, but that sort of sets you up to say you do whatever size you develop at. So I like to do scale with screen size. This sets up a generic screen size. You can do whatever you want. This is kind of a low resolution game, so this is fine. But then this actually decides, like you could actually. I actually like to put this at 0.5. That some of the problems here is like, when we play this, like on a mobile device, for instance, I've run into this problem where it's like that's your UI. It's like you're sure you'll be a lot bigger, but your UI is really really small. So I've been working with stuff to how to improve that a little bit. But this gives you a pretty good option to scale. It basically it stops the problem I was having at the very start where it's like my UI is kind of small. Depending on resolution, all sorts of things. This is kind of the quickest fix. Um, so anyways, so let's run through here. Let's do maximize, yeah. And then you can maximize some play. And anyway, so the cool thing to me is like just the ability. I just thought, hey, It seems like a drag and drop is, a really nice way to go. It might trivialize some of the game. Like, let's see, let's not do water because I know it's a combination, but it might trivialize the game because you can just spam click these things. Um, put in water here. Oh, there you go. So you could, like, sit there and say, like, let's say, like, you want to do fire. And then try, oh yeah. Oh, sorry. So you just, I thought about too, like when you, well, that's a bug. Yeah, I noticed this too. It's like it's interesting. Like, can I ruin this somehow? Oh no, I guess. Yeah. So I thought about too. Like when I created these, this create item, I thought about going through and adding the item click script to these, which, which would allow you to click on them. Um, because right now you have to drag them, or you can just, if you like the wood here, you can actually, flip through the items you want to craft. See if I can find another discovery real quick. I'm wondering if that's a bug. Oh, hey, fireplace would probably be good. Oh, there we go. That was sand and fireplace. The guy was like, yeah, it's sand and fire. And it's like, yeah, no, buddy. Wood and rock. Now, somehow it recognizes that we have not collected these items, so that's good. Um, anyway, so I thought about adding a script to these too. Um, um, yeah. So I really like this idea. It's really simple. It sort of does exactly kind of what I've been thinking about doing crafting for my game because it seems pretty cool. Uh, Mine's probably going to be a lot more complex, but you really kind of need this generic. Too. It's also makes sense too because I was using all sorts of blueprints and all sorts of systems because this actually affects like RTS games when you try to create a list of buildings that you want to create, and then those buildings, a logging camp needs a tool shop and something else. So these could be any number of different things to, this is one of the things where it trivializes it. Although you kind of have to say like, hey, okay, I'm going to start with the fireplace and cycle through to the fireplace. Um, Other thing too cool is I didn't have to change this, but like you, when you swap an item back, oh, there we go. It adds in this to this, to the bottom of the item. The other thing too, it might be cool is that you could actually do this like pick up and drag items between themselves. Uh, Sort of create this like you want to sort your items or something. It might be also cool to have filters. So there's a lot of cool things I can do with this. I probably won't add too much more to this project because it's someone else's project, but I might, you know, like all the core concepts are there. So I don't know what I've talked to a couple other people. Some people are, like this is their, it's like, but it's like YouTube. I'm trying to learn how to do these projects and how to make it. Oh, sorry, I'm showing you all the tricks of the game. But I'm trying to learn how to do, how to make things like this work through like I think Quill 18 and and Brackeys, and Brackeys is actually pretty awesome in the last few years because he's got these really quick polished videos that kind of help you. Um, so it's like it's great. Even have his I looked in the project. I have a YouTube folder for Brackeys and it had an RTS camera in there. So anyways, it's kind of the cool thing here. So this is Micaiah. I guess I have a PowerPoint somewhere here. Yeah, this is, I work with a company called Haven Studios. It's our horrible website. I'm Micaiah. I've actually a very advanced, I've been doing programming for quite, I didn't mention that, but I've been doing programming for a very long time. So it's like these, it's like, it's quite simple. And I know just a ton of languages. I'm actually just started learning with PHP with another YouTuber, and it's like just picking it back up. It's like I Lua, and so don't feel bad if I'm kind of way ahead of a lot of people. But it's like I've been doing this for a very long time, and and this is kind of really simple, and I and did a Dr. Deckenstein, I think, is one of the really great examples of the drag and drop, where he came up with an entire game that had cards that you had to drag in and drop, and so that was probably one of the. Um, but then too, it's like, just not to take away from Brackeys, because like I mean, his drag handler here is pretty much how you would do a drag handler. He's got some secondary systems like his audio system in here, but that's kind of how it's a great way to do it. I actually like this too, is like all the times I need to take my objects that have and get components off them, and this is an interesting way to do it. On my item pool, yeah, I did basically the same thing here, but the problem here is that this is an object that's being passed in. You like here, this passes in this, but and maybe I could change this to an item, and just get the item some other way. But it's actually kind of complicated, because this sometimes you don't know what the item is. You just know you're just passing around a game object. Anyway, so I've been, not to discount Brackeys, basically was what I'm saying is, and his source code is on his um, let's see, I think I have this here. Oh, no, wrong. Anyway, sorry. So yeah, so let me know if you have any comments. I just do these for fun to kind of showcase what's going on, and I appreciate everybody's watching them. You take care, and I'll see you next time.